Hebrews, Hebrews, Hebrews. This is Prophets of Awakening. This is our Friday night Q&A, the 18th of February, 2022. We'll be dealing with Joshua 68 and 69. It's the story of Moses in his childhood. So I want to say like, share, and subscribe to Prophets of Awakening, and to hit our Prophets of Awakening channel and hit the notification button. This is a non-Messianic channel. We deal with the Tanakh and the Torah. Tanakh is the Old Testament, and the Torah is the first 5 books of the Old Testament that was given to Moses on Mount Sinai. So shalom and welcome everyone to Prophets of Awakening channel, and welcome to our Friday night Q&A session. We're going to do our moment of silence, a Sabbath prayer, songs, current events, and then we'll go into a little Q&A, and then we'll go into the discussion. So this moment of silence is for the Lord of hosts, our Redeemer, and Most High, and all that they're doing to bring about our turn our captivity that we from being over in America. Okay. Oh Lord, we come before thee at this hour on your day that you have given us for rest, the Sabbath, praising you and honoring you because of your position both in heaven and upon the earth, the position in which the Creator Yahweh have given unto thee. Through your spirit and counsel, O Lord, we have awakened, and we have awakened to know who we are as a people, and who you are as our Savior and our Redeemer. We are thankful for all that you have done, and we eagerly searching the scriptures out, that we may be in the right place at the right time upon your arrival on this planet. Lord, I pray to thee that you continue to let your light shine down upon us in spirit and in truth. We love you. We seek you daily, O Lord. There is none else besides thee to redeem us. We see you in the affairs of the world, and we faithfully await your deliverance. Peace be unto thee. Okay. We'll read a psalm. Okay. So I'm going to read Psalms 135. It's the greatness of the Lord and the vanity of idols. Praise ye the Lord. Praise ye the name of the Lord. Praise him, O ye servants of the Lord, ye that stand in the house of the Lord, in the courts of his house of our God. Praise the Lord, for the Lord is good. Sing praises unto his name, for it is pleasant. For the Lord hath chosen Jacob unto himself, and Israel for his peculiar treasure. I know that the Lord is great, and that our God, that our Lord is above all gods. Whatsoever the Lord pleased, that did he in heaven, and in the earth, and in the seas, and all deep places. He causes the vapors to ascend from the ends of the earth, maketh lightning for the rain. He bringeth the wind out of his treasures. Who smote the firstborn of Egypt, both man and beast? Okay. Who sent tokens and wonders into the midst of thee, O Egypt, upon Pharaoh and upon all his servants, who smote great nations and slew mighty kings, Sihon, king of the Amorites, and Og, king of Bashan, and all the kingdoms of the Canaanites, and gave their land for a heritage unto Israel, his people. Thy name, O Lord, endureth forever, and thy memorial, O Lord, throughout all generations. For the Lord will judge his people, and he will repent himself of concerning his servants. The idols of the heathen are silver and gold, the work of men's hands. They have mouths, but they speak not. Eyes have they, but they see not. They have ears, but they hear not. Neither is there any breath in their mouths. They that make them are like unto them. So is everyone that trusteth in them. Bless the Lord, O house of Israel. Bless the Lord, O house of Aaron. Bless the Lord, O house of Levi. Ye that fear the Lord, bless the Lord. Blessed be the Lord out of Zion, which dwelleth at Jerusalem. Praise ye the Lord. Okay. Anybody have any comments on that? Okay, well, I was going to say that in these last days, it's told us that, Most High's going to pour the Spirit out on Israel, the righteous ones and the ones that, that have zeal for him. And it said that if they have ears to hear, they're going to hear, and if they have eyes to see, they'll see. And so, just like these idols in the Psalms here, 35, starting at verse 15, it says, the idols of the heathen are silver and gold, the works of man's hands. They have mouths, but they speak not. Eyes have they, but they see not. They have ears, but they hear not. Neither is there any breath in their mouths. And then they that make them are likened unto them. So is everyone that trusteth in them. So these idol worshippers, they blind and can't hear and can't see, just like the idol itself. Okay. So with that being said, I'm just gonna go to some current events. Anybody got any current events they want to bring up?
I would just like to share a little current event that I read today.
Okay.
After 44 years of being in prison, uh, a man was released from Louisiana State Prison. He went
Okay.
in when he was 25. Yesterday, he turned 70.
Okay.
So that was a blessing. And the judge that released him, that judge father had turned down his case years ago.
So was
So,
he innocent?
yes, yes. So he is released. And the thing is, he was accused of raping twins. They were
Right.
14 white women. He was accused. Now, they was twin. He raped both of them now.
Okay.
And they didn't do anything. That's the thing I didn't understand. At 14, and they said he was 25.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was a good story that I read today.
Okay. I guess so.
Yes.
You starting to see that's a pattern that they got all these guys locked up from trying like they was innocent the whole time.
Right.
That's so.
I think they said he got originally 100 years,
Uh-huh.
and he spent 44.
Okay. Well, yeah, we looking for a big check, huh?
Oh yeah.
Okay. That's so. Okay.
Ukraine.
Is
Is a proxy war underway, or is Russia pulling its troops back? In the last 24 hours, tensions have increased. Reports say 190,000 Russian troops have now surrounded Ukraine. The shelling in eastern Ukraine has not stopped, and Russia seems to be escalating tensions, this time with a nuclear provocation. Also, more videos are coming out of Donbass. This is the Stanitsia Luhanska town. A kindergarten was targeted here yesterday. Bombs have now reached homes. One eyewitness captured this. Soon enough, one of the shells fell on a house. A man was seen desperately trying to put out the fire. Ukraine says it has recorded 60 ceasefire violations in 24 hours, 60. Who is behind the shelling? Ukraine is blaming Russian separatists. One soldier is injured. Kiev claims a city was targeted by tanks.
You are already aware that the enemy has shelled Ukrainian territories with heavy artillery banned by Minsk agreements. Civilian infrastructure at Stanitsia Luhanska was damaged. At least 2 people were hurt. In Marinka, 1 civilian and 1 serviceman have been injured. Troitsky came under fire from a tank.
As the shelling continues, Russian-backed separatists have ordered an evacuation. They want people living in Donetsk to move to Russia. Separatists say Moscow has agreed to provide accommodation to those who leave, and women, children, and the elderly should be evacuated first. Why is this significant? Because these separatists say that Ukraine is preparing to launch an offensive.
The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, in the near future, will give the order for his soldiers to go on the offensive. Temporary escape will protect your life and health, and that of your relatives.
As if on cue, the Russian president also issued a statement. He referred to eastern Ukraine and said the situation there is deteriorating.
Right now, we are seeing a deterioration of the situation in Donbass.
Is this the beginning of an invasion? Vladimir Putin is raising the stakes. A massive nuclear drill is being planned for tomorrow. Usually, they happen in October, but this time Moscow has moved up these drills. The Russian president plans to personally oversee this exercise. Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko is also invited. Remember, Belarus shares a border with Ukraine, also with Russia, of course, and Russian forces are already conducting drills in Belarus till the 20th. They're within striking distance of Kiev. Lukashenko is a loyal partner for Putin. He has offered to host Russian nukes in the past. Now, Moscow wants to remind the world that it is a nuclear power. Tomorrow's exercise will involve Russia's strategic forces. They will conduct multiple practice launches of intercontinental ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. In the past 2 days, Russia says it has also withdrawn some troops. And throughout, it has maintained that it will not start a war. But Kiev is not taking chances. The Ukrainian forces have launched drills of their own. Helicopters, tanks, and ground forces will train for the next 10 days. And although Ukraine denies the possibility of a large-scale Russian invasion, its top ally, the United States, insists that war is imminent. America says Putin must demonstrate that he won't attack.
So let me make this simple. The Russian government can announce today, with no qualification, equivocation, or deflection, that Russia will not invade Ukraine. State it clearly, state it plainly to the world, and then demonstrate it by sending your troops, your tanks, your planes back to their barracks and hangars, and sending your diplomats to the negotiating table.
Earlier, U.S. President Joe Biden spoke and said the threat of a Russian invasion remains, quote-unquote, very high.
How high is the threat of a Russian invasion right now?
It's very high. Very, because they have not moved any of their troops out. They've moved more troops in. Number one. Number two, we have reason to believe that they are engaged in a false flag operation to have an excuse to go in. Every indication we have is they're prepared to go into Ukraine, attack Ukraine.
America's assessments are being mocked. First, they said an invasion is imminent. Then they said it would happen on the 16th of February and 50,000 civilians will be killed. Then they said it could happen any day. This has been going on for more than 3 weeks now. Here's the latest from US Intel. It says a Russian invasion could play out in 3 stages. Stage 1, Russia will manufacture a pretext, a violent event. It can be real or fake. This is what the Americans are saying, something that Ukraine will be blamed for. Stage 2 is theatrics, according to them. Moscow will convene emergency meetings. Proclamations will be issued from the Kremlin. They will declare why Russia needs to respond militarily to the so-called crisis. And stage 3 is an attack on Ukraine. Russia will strike Ukraine with bombs. Communications will be jammed. There will be cyber attacks on Ukrainian institutions. This is what The US assessment says the United Kingdom is going one step further. It says that Vladimir Putin has already made up his mind. He will invade, and Russian false flag operations have begun.
I wish I could give everybody better news about this, but I have to tell you that the picture is continuing to be very grim. And today, as I'm sure you've already picked up, a kindergarten was shelled in what we're taking to be what we know was a false flag operation designed to discredit the Ukrainians, designed to create a pretext, a spurious provocation for Russian action. We fear very much that is the kind of thing we'll see more of over the next few days.
So the West continues to press the panic button and dismiss Russia's claims of a withdrawal. Western leaders have gathered in Munich. It's a three-day-long security conference that's underway. They call it Davos for Defense. The Munich Security Conference is an annual affair. Needless to say, this time the focus is on Ukraine. They've invited Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, and he's attending. Russia too is invited, but they're not going. And this is a first. Even in 2014, just before Russia annexed Crimea, they participated in the Munich conference. Not this time, though. It shows how deep the divisions have become. Next week, foreign ministers of the US and Russia will meet again. The good part is they're still talking. The bad part is all of this talk is not delivering a solution. Perhaps they should pay heed to what India said at the United Nations Security Council. We must take into account the quote-unquote legitimate security interests of all countries. Any steps that increase tension should be avoided by all sides.
Okay. Any comments? Look like war to me.
Right, if they're starting to bust people out, you know,
right,
they know something is getting ready to go down.
Oh, yeah. They ain't looking good. I know that. Good song. Okay. Okay.
The U.S. commercial real estate collapse is being aggravated by the ongoing supply chain crisis as the national warehouse vacancy rate drops to the lowest level on record. Shortages prevent builders from increasing capacity, leading commercial property rents to soar and businesses to take on massive loads of debt to afford for space that hasn't even been built yet. Now, there's a lot to cover in today's video, so please don't forget to leave it a thumbs up and please subscribe to always get our latest notifications. The global supply chain crisis continues to wreak havoc on every sector of the industry. Now, it is impacting commercial real estate construction at a time businesses and ports need it the most, with the worst potentially still to come. While manufacturers and retailers struggle to restock their inventories and consumers feel the pain of shipping delays and price increases, commercial real estate builders and landlords are losing a major opportunity to recover financially from the losses suffered over the past few years. Now that's happening because most commercial real estates around ports and in metropolitan areas have already been leased and turned into warehouses, leaving vacancy rates at record lows at a time that demand for space is soaring, which is pushing commercial rent prices significantly up. Right now, there are approximately 5.6 million containers sitting at U.S. ports waiting to be picked up by truckers and delivered at warehouses to be distributed to stores all across the country. But not only is the entire supply chain backed up and ports are extremely congested, while the number of truck drivers in the sector continues to decline, warehouse space has been simply impossible to find, which is making the monumental pile of containers bigger and bigger with each passing day. The situation is aggravating so rapidly that experts estimate that things won't come back to normal for at least the next 2 to 3 years. and the fact that there are extensive shortages of raw materials, of parts, and several construction supplies is particularly worrying for the commercial real estate sector. The commercial real estate collapse has started to spread across America as businesses massively failed to repay property loans and rents, sinking the sector into debt. That trend has accelerated during the early stages of the health crisis, when business shutdowns led corporate earnings to collapse, and a shift in consumer patterns to online commerce caused a steep decline in the value of commercial properties. Today, conditions are different, but the result is going to be the same. Construction companies and businesses are taking on massive loans to invest in the creation of more capacity, which includes warehouses and distribution centers outside.
Whether your shoes are knit, leather, or canvas, the Shoeblader signature
major U.S. ports. On a yearly basis, over $1 trillion worth of goods arrives at the U.S. coast to be processed and distributed around the nation until they reach the end consumer. In that sense, it's understandable why there's a mad rush to build more facilities to accommodate all of these products. However, a global shortage of raw materials is causing shortages of key construction supplies, expanding delivery times, and driving prices to unprecedented highs. That's to say, companies are spending billions of dollars to create warehouse spaces that might take years to be built. By then, consumer demand will likely have shifted and probably cooled off, given that rampant inflation continues to compromise people's buying power. Monetary tightening also means companies will have to pay higher rates on property loans, but slower consumer spending means they'll have less cash flow on their balance sheets. In essence, private landlords and construction companies are going to be left with a glut of commercial real estate, just as it happened before. Now,
okay, any comments? So, like I was saying before, earlier in this month, was that, they're not really in a position to be trying to contend with Russia because they don't even have they ducks in a row when it comes to producing what the America's economy needs. Let's not talk about having the proper stuff they need for wartime, because everything got to escalate whenever war comes. Whatever country is that's involved in the war, they have to go to wartime supply and production. And so they caught up in this, so they're really looking good. We got some need to know information pertaining to this Russian and Ukraine thing, so we'll play that, then we'll do some Q&A. Okay.
Four-star general, also chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, and Fox News senior strategic analyst. That is the big question, General. We keep hearing the administration and others involved saying, don't give up on diplomacy, but is there a chance it might still work?
Well, I think it's pretty remote at this point. I mean, the senior government officials are privately saying that Russia is going to attack, that the off-ramp for diplomacy, the only way that could possibly happen at this point is just because Putin decides to do that. But people don't see the evidence that that's going to take place, largely because of what he is doing with the disposition and employment of his forces.
We have exquisite intelligence on what is taking place out here. Tracking what an army does on a battlefield, Charles, is quite easy to do for a technology-based intelligence capability that the United States has. And we're tracking that. We're not only taking pictures of it, but we're listening to their operational nets, their tactical nets, etc. So we got a sense of what they're doing. And if they move out of those administrative motor parks that we've been taking commercial satellite photos of and begin to move into assembly areas where they get upgunned and they get gassed, and then they move into attack positions, that's telling you something. And clearly we are monitoring all of that activity.
To that point, General, I heard reports that now the manpower, the Russian manpower, up to 190,000. And to put it in perspective, this is the largest assembly of a military force since World War II. I mean, this is major. For people who really aren't paying attention, this is potentially a major military showdown.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about that. And literally, warfare has changed, Charles, dramatically since World War II. I mean, we had about 157,000 in the Normandy invasion, but we had 7,000 ships out there with landing craft and about 3,000 aircraft. And in the 2003 invasion in Iraq, we had about 177,000 as an invasion force with air supporting it. What we have here, certainly, is a ground force somewhere in the neighborhood of 170,000, 180,000 plus. But the precision nature of the weapons we're using and the standoff capabilities they have dramatically changed since World War II. So in the pre-assault fires phase that would come before the ground invasion, Russia will attack with air, missiles, and rocket artillery. Those missiles can travel actually thousands of miles with an extraordinary accuracy landing on a target. And those missiles will be cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. He's got bombers and fighter aircraft, just like we in the United States have, that have enormous standoff capability to deliver very accurate fires, while the tanks and other vehicles are very similar to what we had in World War II. Even those vehicles, those tank munitions, they can fire out thousands of meters versus hundreds of meters. So warfare has changed. It's significantly more lethal than what it has ever been. And it's considerably more precise in the use of the weapons, and many of them are standoff weapons themselves.
That brings us to the Ukrainians being able to defend themselves. I've heard you on this air applauding the Biden administration for the actions that they've taken. Many thought initially perhaps they were slow to get the Ukrainian military some defense weapons. How long or could they potentially hold off this advanced Russian army that you just described?
Yeah, not very long. I mean, they are absolutely outmatched. They have significant resolve and will. And we saw what happened in Afghanistan with an army that lost its resolve and will. So they will fight. But listen, they have no defense at all against any of Russia's missiles. Think of that. Wow. That's quite extraordinary. They have hardly any defense against all of Russia's 500 combat aircraft that they have. They just got recently some Stinger shoulder-fired air defense systems from the Baltics. They wanted these air defense missiles and air defense systems and anti-ship systems years ago from the United States. They certainly wanted it back in March when the Russians came on their border with 70,000 troops. We gave them none of that. We gave them some anti-tank weapons and some small arms. So my frustration has been this all along. I understand we're not going to put U.S. troops on the ground to fight with the Ukrainians because they're not a NATO country. But we also said, but we're going to help them defend themselves. And that's what the Ukrainians want. They didn't want our troops on the ground. But if that's the mission, then why didn't we go all in and give them all of those capabilities that where it still would not be a fair fight, but where they could impose some cost on the Russians and cause them to think a little bit, well, wait a second here. These casualties are going to go up significantly. We're going to lose aircraft. We have the potential to lose ships, etc. And Putin.
Any comments? Like I say, we might be in a tight situation a lot sooner than we think. The way it's looking. Okay. Nobody have no comments on that. We're gonna go into some Q&A. Anybody have any questions or comments about anything from last night or during the week or whatever, or searching the internet you wanna bring up? Okay. We ain't got nothing. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to clean up something. Yesterday, I was mentioning about one video I played about the lady was talking about reparations and slavery and how that, you know, it was mentioned 3 different times by, the people that was on the video about the 2,000 years. And so the reason I said that was it's a prophecy. And Hosea, I'm gonna read it right quick, then we'll go on to class. But in Hosea mentioned in chapter 6 that it says in chapter 6, starting at verse 1, come and let us return unto the Lord. This is our forefathers during the time of Hosea, just after they returned from Babylon and after they had rebuilt the temple, but they went back to doing the same thing that caused them to go into Babylon. So Most High sent the Greeks. So it says, come and let us return unto the Lord, for he have torn, he will heal us, he has smitten, he will bind us up. After 2 days will he revive us, and in the 3rd day he will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight. So we see right here, rightly dividing this, a day with the Lord is 1,000 years. So actually what is being said right here, after 2,000 years will he revive us in the 3rd day. So in the midst of the 3rd days, which is where we at right now, he's going to revive us, which means he's going to restore us and bring us, deliver us from the captivity that we in. So this right here, when we right divide it, it's right along with scripture. It fits right in.
Where is that again? Where are you?
That's Hosea chapter 6.
Okay.
So and another thing, since we're here, notice that people on this line know, or they should know now, that JC was a concoction, and he came about. He was created because of when they got hold of our scriptures. I mean, they created all this from them having our scriptures, having the Tanakh, and they came up with all this Messiah and all that. So the example of that is they asked him, they asked JC, what's your sign? Because in the Old Testament, every prophet have a sign. Example is Isaiah chapter 7. He asked Ahaz what sign was, what your sign is. So every prophet have a sign. So JC said his sign was just like Jonah when he went, belly of the whale. He was there for 3 days and 3 nights. So shall the Son of Man be in the earth, which is gonna die. And he'll be buried in the earth 3 days, and he arrived, 2 nights, 2 days and 2 nights, and he arrived on the 3rd day. Well, here you go, right here. After 2 days, he will revive us. In the 3rd day, he will raise us up. Same thing. So we say, why are you reading that? Well, JC supposed to be the Son of God, and he was a little child that was born in the manger. But let's look at it. We're gonna go to Hosea chapter 11. And chapter 11 says, when Israel was a child, there go the child right there. The nation of Israel in its makings back in Egypt. When the 70 souls went into Egypt and they came out, that's when Israel was a child in the makings. So when Israel was a child, then I loved him, the Most High talking, and I called my son out of Egypt. They go to son. They go the child, the little child, and the son. And it's the nation of Israel, not JC. So you go back to Hosea chapter 6, say, come and let us return unto the Lord, for he hath torn, he will heal us. This is the son, this is the little child. He hath smitten, and he will bind us up. After 2 days will he revive us. In the 3rd day, he will raise us up, and he will live in his sight. So like I said before, somebody lying somewhere. And we know this prophecy in Hosea was already here long before Council Nell Sear and JC came on the scene. So we know, we see what a lie is. Okay. A little bit of information. So if nobody have no comments, I'm gonna go into reading out of Joshua chapter 68 and 69. No comments? Okay. So I'm in Joshua. We're dealing with Moses. I think I went here before. We're just gonna go a little deeper into this conversation, to the story. So starting at chapter 68, it says, and it was at the time the Spirit of God was upon Miriam, the daughter of Abram, the sister of Aaron, and she went forth and prophesied about the house, saying, behold, a son will be born unto us from my father and mother this time, and he will save Israel from the hands of Egypt. And when Abram heard the words of his daughter, he went and took his wife back to the house after he had driven her away. At that time, when Pharaoh ordered every male child of the house of Jacob to be thrown into the water. So Abram took Jochebed, his wife, 3 years after he had driven her away, and she came to her and she conceived. And at the end of 7 months from her conception, she brought forth a son, and the whole house was filled with a great light, as the light of the sun and the moon at the time of shining. And when the woman saw that the child that it was good and pleasing to the sight, she hid it for 3 months in an inner room. So let's look at that right quick. I want to shine a light on it before I forget. So we go back and remember reading what they was talking about when Noah was born. Say his eyes shine like the sun. He supposed to be an albino, but his eyes shine like the sun, and he he had a light on him and it filled the whole room. Well, here you go, come from right here. Says let me see. It says 68 and 4. Says at the end of 7 months from her conception, she brought forth a son, and the whole house is filled with a great light. Yeah, as the light of the sun and the moon at the time of their shining. And when the woman saw the child that it was good and pleasing to the sight, she hid it for 3 months in an inner room. And in those days, the Egyptians conspired to destroy all the Hebrews there. The Egyptians women went to Goshen, where the children of Israel were, and they carried their young ones upon their shoulders, their babies who could not yet speak. And in those days, when the women of the children of Israel brought forth, each woman had hidden her son from before the Egyptians, that the Egyptians might not know of their bringing forth and might not destroy them from the land. And Egyptian women came to Goshen, and their children who could not speak were upon their shoulders. And when the Egyptian women came into the house of a Hebrew woman, her babe began to cry. And when he cried, the child that was in the inner room answered it. So the Egyptian women went and told it to the house of the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh sent his officers to take the children to slay them. Thus did the Egyptians of the Hebrew women all days. And it was at that time, about 3 months from Jochebed's concealment of her son, that the thing was known in Pharaoh's house. And the woman hastened to take away her son before the officers came, and she took him an ark of she took for him an ark of bulrushes and dubbed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river's bank. And his sister Miriam stood afar off to know what would become of him and what would become of her words. And God sent forth at the time the terrible heat in the land of Egypt, which burned up the flesh of men like the sun in his circuit, and it greatly oppressed the Egyptians. And all the Egyptians went down to bathe in the river on account of the consuming heat which burned up their flesh. And Betha, the daughter of Pharaoh, went also to bathe in the river, owing to the consuming heat, and her maidens walked at the riverside, and all the women of Egypt as well. And Betha lifted up her eyes to the river, and she saw the ark upon the water, and she sent her maid to fetch it, and she opened it up. Then she opened it and saw the child, and behold, the babe wept, and she had compassion on him, and she said, "This is one of the Hebrew children." And all the women of Egypt, walking on the riverside, desired to give him suck, but he would not suck, for this thing was from the Lord, in order to restore him to his mother's breast. And Miriam, his sister, was at the time amongst the Egyptian women at the riverside, and she saw this thing, and she said to the Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and fetch a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for thee?" And the Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." And the young woman went and called the child's mother. And the Pharaoh's daughter said to Jacob, "Take this child away and suckle it for me, and I will pay thee thy wages, 2 bits of silver daily." And the woman took the child and nursed it. And at the end of 2 years, when the child grew up, she brought him to the daughter of Pharaoh, and he was under her as a son. And she called his name Moses, but she said, "Because I drew him out of the water." And Abraham, his father, called his name Chabar, for he said it was for him that he associated with his wife, whom he had turned away. And Jacob, his mother, called his name Jekethah, because she said, "I have hope for him to the mighty, and God restored him unto me." And Miriam, his sister, called him Jared, for she descended after him to the river to know what his end would be. And Aaron, his brother, called his name Abazunah, saying, "My father left my mother and returned to her on his account." And Kiath, the father of Abram, called his name Abijah, because of his account that God repaired the breach of the house of Jacob, that they could no longer throw the male children into the water. And their nurse called him Abid Sukkah, saying, "In his tabernacle was he hidden for 3 months, and on account of the children of Ham." And all Israel called his name Shimei, son of Nathan, for they said, "In his days has God heard their cries and rescued them from their oppressors." And Moses was in Pharaoh's house and was under Betha, Pharaoh's daughter, as a son. And Moses grew up among his king's children. Okay. Then the king of Edom died in those days in the 18th year of his reign, and was buried in his temple, which he had built for himself as a royal residence in the land of Edom. And the children of Esau, okay, let me see what I'm doing now. Okay, yeah, that's chapter 69 says, "And the king of Edom died in those days in the 18th year of his reign, and was buried in the temple which he had built for himself as a royal resident in the land of Edom. The children of Esau sent to Peter, which is upon the river, and they fetched from there a young man with beautiful eyes and comely aspect, whose name was Saul, and they made him king over them in the place of similar, and Saul reigned over all the land of Egypt, of Esau, in the land of Edom 40 years. And when the Pharaoh's king of Egypt saw that the counsel which Balaam had advised respecting the children of Israel did not succeed, but that still they were fruitful and multiplied and increased throughout the land of Egypt, then the Pharaoh commanded in those days that a proclamation should be issued throughout Egypt to the children of Israel, saying, no man shall diminish anything of his labor, his daily labor. The man who shall be found deficient in his labor which he performs daily, whether in mortar or in brick, then his youngest son shall be put in their place. And the labor of Egypt strengthened upon the children of Israel in those days. And behold, if one brick was deficient in any man's daily labor, the Egyptians took his youngest boy by force from his mother and put him into the building in the place of the brick which his father had left wanting. And the men of Egypt did so to all the children of Israel day by day, all the days for a long period. But the tribe of Levi did not at that time work with the Israelites, their brethren, from the beginning, for the children of Levi knew the cunning of the Egyptians, which they exercised at first toward the Israelites. So that's what I just read was chapters 68 and 69. Anybody have any comments? Anything that rung a bell or stuck out?
Verse 20 in the first chapter you read, chapter 68.
Okay.
Saying, all the women of Egypt walking on the riverside desired to give him suck, but he would not suck. For this thing was from the Lord in order to restore him to his mother's breast. That's something, because you don't know how long he'd been out there, but he wouldn't suck.
Right. Exactly.
The Egyptian women.
Right. That's the prime example right there. What I mean by, you're not realizing it, but you doubting the Most High. But when you done read stuff like this, why would you figure that it's something he can't do instead of just waiting? Because he can do it like this right here. Now, if in a known situation, he'd been getting all kind of milk. But the Most High, it's a little bitty baby, but the Most High dictate what he do.
Right. Come on.
Because he got a certain thing, just like the famine that came, that brought the Israelites into Egypt, because he wanted them in Egypt. So it ain't nothing that you can't manipulate and make it happen. All you need to do is you got to understand that and sit back and wait on it. Make it known, like he said, cry loud and spare not, and then wait on it. It's that simple. But that ain't how it happens. Most people they don't see it like that.
What I noticed is, I don't know if it's just because I know different books and they use the God, Lord Almighty. And 26, when you read in there, was saying that because she said, I have hoped for him to the Almighty, and God restored him unto me. Is she talking about the Most High and the Lord, or is that all the Lord of hosts?
That's the Lord of hosts. If you go to not Isaiah, but Isaiah, when he says that I and the children whom the Lord have given me are for signs and wonders. So, and then we see how Sarah was barren, Rebecca was barren. So, the Lord of hosts is the one dealing with these, bringing forth these kids, not the Almighty. Well, not Yahweh. They're saying Almighty, but we know it's the Lord of hosts.
Well, yeah, I was wondering if she like had. She said she hoped to one and then God. So I was wondering if the Lord is who restored her, but I don't
She
know. I
prayed.
guess whenever I see Almighty and then and sometimes it could mean the same. I just trying to whenever I see that, I try to read it differently to see both ways.
Right,
Um,
right. Yeah, she's, you can look at that as mighty one. That's what the Lord holds is, a mighty
mhm,
one. Is almighty, almighty, and God restored him under me. So yeah,
okay.
okay. Anybody else got anything? I'm gonna read chapter 70 and then we'll close out. So it says, chapter 70, and in the third year, from the birth of Moses, Pharaoh was sitting at a banquet when I can't pronounce his name. I'll pronounce the queen was sitting at his right hand and Betha at his left, and the lad Moses was lying upon her bosom, and Balaam, son of Peor, with his two sons, and all the princes of the kingdom were sitting at the table in the king's presence. And the lad stretched forth his hand upon the king's head, took the crown from the king's head, placed it on his own head. And when the king and the princesses saw the work which the boy had done, the king and the princes were terrified. And one man to his neighbor expressed astonishment. And the king said unto the princes who were before him at the table, what speak you, and what say you, O ye princes, in this matter? And what is to be the judgment against the boy on account of this act? And Balaam the son of Peor the musician answered before the king and the princes, and he said, remember now, O my lord and king, the dream which thou didst dream many days since, and that which thy servant interpreted unto thee. Now therefore this is a child from the Hebrew children, in whom the Spirit of God, and let not my Lord the King imagine that this youngster did this thing without knowledge. So this is what I was talking about last night. I shined a light on when I said that he says that the Most High was talking to Zechariah, that talking to let me get that name. That is, I know it's got the Zerubbabel, Joshua, the high priest, when he was bringing him forth to get ready to take the Israelites back to deliver them from Babylon. He said that he was going to raise Joshua up, and he's going to be amongst men that's greatly wondered at. Talking about the Levites and Aaron's seed. They greatly wondered at because there was no other men like them. And the simple fact was, like I said, they was interacting with these angels. The knowledge they had was far superior to any other mention of men. So that's what. So we said the same thing right here. It was already understood. Verse 6 says, now, therefore, this child is from the Hebrew children, in whom is the Spirit of God. See that? And let not my Lord the King imagine that this youngster did not get this thing without knowledge. So he's saying that they super sharp. And they got knowledge beyond us. So he knows exactly what he's doing. He ain't just no child that took this crown off your head. So he said 7, for he is a Hebrew boy, and wisdom. See that? Men greatly wonder that. And wisdom and understanding are with him, although he is yet a child. So evidently this wasn't right. This wasn't the same with other children, sons in other nations. It says that although he is yet a child, and with wisdom he has done this, and chosen unto himself a kingdom. See that? Well, this is the manner of all Hebrews, to deceive kings and their nobles. This is for you to know how much they've been casing us even to the day. So it says to deceive the kings and their nobles, to do all these things cunningly, in order to make the kings of the earth and their men tremble. Surely thou knowest that Abraham, their father, acted thus, who deceived the army of Nimrod, king of Babylon, and Amalek, king of Gerar, and that he possessed himself of the land of the children of Heth and all the kingdoms of Canaan, and that he descended into Egypt and said of Sarah his wife, she is my sister, in order that to mislead Egypt and her king. So his son Isaac also did so when he went to Gerar and dwelt there, and his strength prevailed over the army of Amalek, king of Philistines. He also thought of making the kingdom of the Philistines stumble, in saying that Rebekah, his wife, was his sister. Jacob also dealt treacherously with his brother, and took from his hand his birthright and his blessing. He went then to Panorama, to the house of Laban, his mother's brother, and cunningly obtained from him his daughter, his cattle, and all belonging to him, and fled away and returned to the land of Canaan to his father. His sons sold their brother Joseph. His sons sold their brother Joseph, who went down into Egypt and became a slave and was placed in the prison house for 12 years, until the former Pharaoh dreamed dreams and withdrew him from the prison house and magnified him above all the princes in Egypt on account of his interpreting his dreams to him. And when God caused a famine through the land, see this right here, well, this is what I mean by it's right now. We in the end times, you know, most people have a lack of understanding. Those other nations have a lack of understanding on how to interpret our scriptures. So he said all that right there, thinking that it's like men doing this, but it's the Lord of hosts doing it. So look at verse 17, it says, verse 16 says, until the former Pharaoh dreamed dreams and withdrew him from the prison house and magnified him above all the princes in the earth, in Egypt, on account of his interpreting his dream. Now here goes his answer right here that he don't understand. And when God, this is the Lord of hosts, caused a famine throughout the land, he sent for and brought his father and all his brothers and the whole of his father's household, and supported them without price or reward, and bought the Egyptians for slaves. So that's what he don't understand. He got a lack of understanding on how it go. Like I said, they can't see these angels anyway, so they mystified because they thinking these Israelites doing all this. So it says, now therefore, my Lord King, behold, this child has risen up in a stead in Egypt, and to do according to their deeds, and to travel with every king, prince, and judge. See, thinking these just like men are doing all this. They have lack of understanding. 19. And if it please the king, let us now spill his blood upon the ground, lest he grow up and take away the government from thy hands, and the hope of Egypt perish after he shall have reigned. And Balaam said to the king, let us moreover call for all the judges of Egypt and the wise men thereof, and let us know if the judgment of death is due to this boy, as thou didst say, and then we will slay him. So I want to shine a light on something. Balaam, you know, I don't know how much people know about Balaam, but Balaam the one gave him the decree to start killing the Hebrew boys because of what they saw the Israelites did when the Amalekites came in the land. Israel rose up and they saw how powerful Israel was. That's what brought about the destruction of the young boys. But Balaam is the one giving him this advice. And Balaam is the one just informed them all of Jacob and Abraham and all them. He the one got the history. That's the same Balaam that when they was coming out of the land and going through the wilderness, that Balak got him to try to put a curse on the Israelites. Same person. So it says, 20, 21. And the Pharaoh sent and called for all the wise men of Egypt, and they came before the king. See this right here? This is what they lacking. And the angel of the Lord came amongst them. See, they don't understand this. And he was like one of the wise men of Egypt. And the king said to the wise men, surely you have heard what this Hebrew boy who is in the house has done, and thus has Balaam judged in that matter. Now, judge you also and see what is due to the boy for the act he has committed. And the angel that who seemed like one of the wise men of Pharaoh answered and said as follows, before all the wise men of Egypt and before the king and the princes, if it please the king, let the king send for men who shall bring before him an onyx stone and a coal of fire, and place them before the child. And if the child shall stretch forth his hands and take the onyx stone, then shall we know that with wisdom has the youth done all that he has done, but we must slay him. Okay? All right? And then it says, but if he stretch forth his hand upon the coal, all right, then shall we know that it was not with knowledge that he did this thing, and he shall live. And the thing seemed good in the eyes of the king and the princes. So the king did according to the words of the angel of the Lord. And the king ordered the onyx stone and the coal to be brought and placed before Moses. So you see what's going on, right? The onyx stone and the coal is part of Hebrew culture, part of our culture. So we been set up. 28. And the king 29. And they placed the boy before them. And the Lord and the lad endeavored to stretch forth his hand to the onyx stone, right? But the angel of the Lord took his hand and placed it upon the coal. And the coal became extinguished in his hand. And he lifted it up and put it in his mouth. And it burned part of his lips and part of his tongue. And it became heavy in his mouth and tongue. And when the king and the princes saw this, they knew that Moses had not acted with wisdom in taking off the crown from the king's head. So the king and the princes refrained from slaying the child. So Moses remained in Pharaoh's house, growing up, and the Lord was with him. And while the boy was in the king's house, he was robed in purple and grew among the children of the king. And when Moses grew up in the king's house, Bethel, the daughter of Pharaoh, considered him as a son, and all that also the Pharaoh honored him, and all the men of Egypt were afraid of him. And he daily went forth and came into the land of Goshen, where his brethren and the children of Israel were. And Moses saw them daily in shortness of breath and hard labor. And Moses asked them, saying, wherefore is the labor meted out unto you day by day? And they told him all that had befallen them and all the injunctions which the Pharaoh had put upon them before his birth. And they told him all the counsel which Balaam, there he is, son of Beer, had counseled against them, and what he had also counseled against him in order to slay him when he had taken the king's crown from off his head. And when Moses heard these things, his anger was kindled against Balaam, and he sought to kill him, and he was in an ambush for him day by day. And Balaam was afraid of Moses. And he and his two sons, Janus and Jambres, rose up and went forth from Egypt, and they fled and delivered their soul and betook themselves to the land of Cush, to Kenash, king of Cush. And Moses was in the king's house, going out and coming in. The Lord gave him favor in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants and in the eyes of all the people of Egypt, and they loved Moses exceedingly. And the day arrived when Moses went to Goshen to see his brethren, that he saw the children of Israel in their burden and hard labor, and Moses was grieved on their account. And Moses returned to the Pharaoh and came to the house of Pharaoh and came before the king, and Moses bowed down before the king. And Moses said unto the Pharaoh, I pray thee, my Lord, I have come to seek a small request from thee. Turn not away my face empty. And the Pharaoh said unto him, speak. And Moses said unto the Pharaoh, let there be given unto thy servants, the children of Israel, who are in Goshen, 1 day rest therein from their labor. And the king answered Moses and said, Behold, I have lifted up thy face in this thing to grant thy request. And Pharaoh ordered the proclamation to be issued throughout Egypt and Goshen, saying, To you, all the children of Israel, thus said the king, for 6 days. See that? You go Hebrew, right back to the Hebrew culture. 6 days you shall do your work and labor, but on the 7th day you shall rest and shall not perform any work. Thus shall you do all the days, as the king and Moses, the son of Betha, have commanded. And Moses rejoiced at this thing which the king had granted to him, and all the children of Israel did as Moses ordered them. And this thing was from the Lord to the children of Israel, but the Lord had begun to remember the children of Israel to save them for the sake of their fathers. And the Lord was with Moses, and his fame went throughout Egypt. And Moses became great in the eyes of the Egyptians, and in the eyes of all the children of Israel, seeing good for his people Israel, and speaking words of peace regarding them to the king. Okay. Any comments? That was chapter 70. Anybody got any comments on that? So I want to shine a light on something. You know, the Most High told Moses after he had dealt with him at the burning bush to go back to Egypt, and that Aaron will be waiting on him, right? Everybody remember that part of the story? Okay. Y'all still there? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, so he sent Moses back after he dealt with him at the burning bush, and he told Moses, one of the things Moses said to him at the burning bush, this is how you write and divide stuff. So he told him at the burning bush, why you chose me? Moses had a stutter. He had he stuttered. He had a heavy tongue. This is why. He put those hot coals in his mouth and he burned his mouth up. So that's why Moses was asking him that at the burning bush. But anyway, he said, he told him, go. Aaron gonna speak for you. See how that adds up? But you know, they don't tell us that in King James. And then the Israelites, they told him all that happened to him when he was little. They told him that he was all that happened to them, how Balaam had killed the children, ordered the council of Pharaoh to kill the young Hebrew boys, and how he had counseled the Pharaoh to kill him. But the angel of the Lord stepped in. But the only way he got out of it was he put that hot coal in his mouth. He burned his mouth up, burned his tongue up, and he had a speech impairment after that. Okay. Okay. With that, just some information I wanted to, a lot of people don't know about this. But anybody else got any comments before we go? Or something they want to say? Okay. So with that being said, I would say shalom to everybody, and I hope you got something out of that. We're gonna see everybody tomorrow for the Sabbath class at 10 o'clock. So with that being said, I want to say shalom to everybody. See y'all in the morning.